Hello everyone, good day. So for today's social networking for social integration subject, I'm going to discuss the topic the individual in social networking and social media for week 7. Anything else, let me brief you on the topics that we're going to talk about today. So first topic is social networking. Next is social media, followed by personal communities, and lastly, cyber community. So let us start by defining social networking and social media. So while the term social media and social network seems to be interchangeable, they have distinct differences. Essentially, social media is a platform for broadcasting information, whereas social networking is a platform for communicating with one another. So the first topic that we're going to talk today is social networking. Consider social networking in the context of who a user is receiving content from. First, social networking requires a platform. Common examples of social networking sites or platforms include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Users join a social network platform and begin connecting or networking with other users. This is done so users can choose who they want to receive communications from. In some cases, communications is one way, while in others, it's bidirectional or multi-directional. In other words, social networking is like selecting radio presets on a car stereo. It helps streamline access to what you do and don't want to consume. And again, content can be delivered through personal or business contacts in the form of news media or any other community or organizations the user is interested in. Now let us define what is social media. When we think of the term media, it usually reminds us of traditional outlets such as newspapers, magazines, and television, right? Yet when you add social in front of it, the term takes on an entirely different vibe. Social media adds a technology component as well as flexibility when it comes to how a person consumes, shares, and collaborates with what is being presented. Thus, social media can best be described as an internet-based way to publish or broadcast digital content that readers or audience can fully interact with. Anyone can publish in social media. Traditional news media outlets like CNN and Fox News publish their own content for digital consumption. Business and organizations do so as well. Even your child's local soccer club can create social media for members to read, watch, and interact with. Now let's talk about the differences or the difference of social networking and social media. So perhaps the biggest difference between social media and social networking is the goal that you're trying to achieve. With social networking, your ultimate goal is to build your network of fans or followers and foster those relationships. Whether or not those relationships lead to new business is an unknown, but it's not really the ultimate goal. Meanwhile, social media differs because while you're certainly trying to generate buzz and interaction, you also want to increase your bottom line, and that means data acquisition for lead generation and sales for e-commerce. Now let's talk about personal communities. So networks built around me, or also known as personal communities, have always been with us. But nowadays with Facebook and its people are becoming very aware that communities can consist a person's network of relationships wherever such communities are located. So, in fact, there are three ways of looking at communities. So, first is once upon a time, almost all people believed that communities were rooted in neighborhood, which is the traditional spatially bounded areas in which, at least in principle, most people know each other and can walk or make a short drive to each other's home. The next type of communities is communities can consist of people with shared interests, such as communities of people who drift cars. And the last type of community is the less traditional way. So we discuss here is that personal communities are defined as those connected to the individuals at their centers. So from this standpoint, friends, neighborhoods, neighbors, kins, acquaintances, co-workers, and fellow members of organizations are personal community members and are often connected to each other. So, in personal communities, there has been a shift in perception from spatially defined communities to relationally defined communities. These personal communities are social networks defined as an individual set of ties. Such personal communities have become more palpably visible with the advent of the internet. Facebook and similar social media organize people's social worlds in terms of list of friends and acquaintances. In an earlier period, personal communities were mostly geographically bound, densely knit, and broadly based ties organized around discrete social units such as bars and taverns or neighborhoods. Today, many personal communities are geographically dispersed, sparsely knit, and specialize the growth of social affordances that facilitates personal communication such as mobile phones, email, and social software such as Facebook and Twitter have radically facilitated this transformation. Where landline phones link households to households, mobile phones and the internet directly link people, giving rise to a contemporary form of community we called as network individualism. Now let's talk about communities as personal communities. So personal community research invokes a certain understanding of community. Instead of regarding communities as bound up with organized institutions such as family, neighborhoods, work, or voluntary organizations, personal community research treats communities as personal networks. The personal network approach views networks from the standpoint of an individual managing his or her ties with others. This contrasts with the whole network approach that observes an entire set of ticks, such as in a neighborhood, workplace, or organization. One practical way to understand the personal network approach is to think about a person's friends on Facebook. His or her personal network would include all fellow Facebook users personally linked to him or her as friends. These friends may be anyone ranging from an acquaintance barely met, a long-lost friend who has recently contacted you, or a neighbor next door. Because personal networks on Facebook can include thousands of weak ties, we follow Hogan's distinction here between personal networks and our subject, personal communities, that consist of the ties that are meaningful to egos. So Facebook and similar social media have privacy issues, and we know that. Such is the world we live in that communities have become personal and private, and yet, in some ways significantly publicized, with friends being announced, shared, and recommended across networks. It has become quite common among Facebook friends to peruse one another's personal networks during their free time. Facebook and MySpace help to facilitate transitive relations. Sharing between network allows different parts of the social structure to overlap and intersect with particular person or ego as the focal point. Such an intertwining possibly breaks down barriers between groups and unites individuals through the sharing of new information and friendships, creating opportunities for developing diverse personal communities. To have diverse friends is to have diverse experiences, and all this add to a broad and enriching life. And now is the conclusion of our topic, personal communities. So personal communities are personal, Yet they are also intensively social, spanning continents, social divisions, and other networks. In reality, personal communities are not like thousands of isolated islands in the Indonesian archipelago. Rather, they overlap with other social networks to create a system of social interactions resembling a loosely coupled but unmistakably linked social whole. The birth and development of communication technologies such as the internet, email, mobile phones, and smartphones now allow people to build communities in new, exciting ways. Because these technologies enable people to talk over large distances as well as keep short distance ties, distance has become less of a barrier to the cultivation and maintenance of personal communities. With the explosive growth of new communications technologies, the contemporary world is undergoing a triple revolution and a social network revolution. The internet revolution opened up renewed ways of communicating and finding information. The power of knowledge is no longer the monopoly of professionals because common folk can now research on the internet and compare notes with healthcare and financial experts. For our last topic today, we're going to talk about cyber community. Cyber community exists within CMC or the computer mediated communication environments, specifically cyberspace, which is the virtual space generated by computer networks. Anchoring its online social interaction to cyberspace, this community is characterized by no interconnectedness generated by physical human activities in offline reality. It is a group of internet users who interact and regularly participate by using a social media profile to post about a given topic. Within cyberspace, cybersociology, the term cyber community or a virtual community are used interchangeably as new forms of community. Cyber community is a virtual community that includes one or more groups of people. Cyber communities and virtual communities communicate through forums, blogs, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, or innumerable instant message platforms. Cyber community or a virtual community enables people from even small towns to communicate with people from anywhere in the world. The risk in cyber community or virtual communities is that people may lie about themselves and it can be difficult to verify whether someone is giving you truthful information. Cyber community and cyber group are based in cyberspace. People form online communities around common interests, locations, lifestyle, or backgrounds, just as people form communities in the past. Virtual communities allow people to interact with each other using different types of computer messages. Because cyber communities can be open to anyone or to a select group of people, but they often fulfill a need. People have to form friendships and romantic relationships or to talk with others about certain issues or topics. Within virtual communities, users can frequently communicate through forums, blogs, or instant messages. Though people in virtual communities do meet in person to communicate or have webcam chats online, they don't have to be in the same room or online at the same time to have a meaningful conversation. When a cyber community has a specific purpose, it has a better chance of staying relevant and interesting to members. And if it doesn't stay from its purpose and regularly features new information. Some cyber communities, including social media websites such as Facebook and Twitter, allow people to choose which individuals will have the opportunity to see messages they put on their pages. Cyber communities such as forums on many newspapers' websites are open for anyone to view. Let's talk about the cyber community dangers or the dangers that we are facing or that we can get from the cyber community. Through cyber communities, people engage with other people as friends or develop strong personal or professional bonds, but getting romantically engaged could be problematic. The dangers to beware in a cyber community or virtual communities is that the information shared may or may not be true. A cyber community or virtual community is a congregation created for a specific purpose between like-minded people. With that, cybersecurity laws are being enacted in countries around to combat the dangers and security of the cyber community poses. So that will be the end of our discussion today. I hope that you learned something on the topics that was discussed. Thank you for listening. Have a great day and goodbye.